let's do the countdown. 47 days until we get to the autumnal equinox. But today it's about the humidity and still chance at some downpours before we have another round of heat and a heat wave still to come back into wave country. All right, hello everyone. I'm wave meteorologist Brian Good. It is 53 minutes after the hour. Obviously, we have a lot to cover in the short term, but we'll get into some of the long-term nuggets as well that are showing up. I will caution that some of the data that are really needed to pull for much more of a September, October type of vibe on data today. The data is not working. It has been down for about 3 days. I was hoping to be up in time to do an update today. Maybe it will be by next week. I doubt it will this week. But I will keep you guys updated when it does. I need that piece to really visualize what I'm really wanting to show. If not, then I'll just start using my maps and I'll just draw it myself, which I'm getting close to do many things these days. Okay. Good morning. Hello, everyone. Carrie, you were first today, right, on YouTube? Poor Ryan Ryan Adams didn't make it in time. He wasn't paying attention to the clock. Hey, I'm not very predictable on that end of things. Most of the things I'm pretty predictable on. But as far as timing, it's not something that I'm always going to be consistent on because I get distracted easily. I can just walk down the hallway and have a conversation with someone and I'm 10 minutes off my whole day. So I apologize, but you guys are on it, so you always got other opportunities. Good morning to Jason watching over on Facebook from Cloverport, Kentucky. First day of school there in Cloverport. Oh yeah, saw a lot of buses, even in JCPS today. They were actually doing all of their bus stops with no students on board just so they can get an idea on timing. So they were, hitting the red light, stop sign comes out. They were waiting for the amount of time it would take for a kid to get off the bus or on, and then they move on. You're going to see that probably all day today. So be patient with bus drivers. You're thinking, what are they doing? There's no one on there. Well, there's a reason for that. They've got to time everything out over and over and over again like they have been just to make sure everything goes smoothly coming up tomorrow. So, it's a good thing that they're doing that. Practice is key on that. But for those who are going back to school, there was a huge list today. I think most of our counties went back today. Beloit County, I think you're next week, I believe, as well as maybe Spencer Taylor. I think it was one of the later counties. You guys are like the 25th of August, something like that. So you got a long summer break. All right, anyway, so where are we going with today's outlook? Well, before I go too far into the future, it's worth talking about the past because of what happened yesterday. Those downpours kind of were scattered about, playing bumper cars. They usually do. We knew we were going to have an uptick in the coverage in our area. Just how that all evolves, you just never know. But once we got the boundary that moved in, I think I was on the 3 o'clock news yesterday when the boundary formed in Washington County, Indiana, around Salem. Once that started pushing east, and then we had one coming in from the west, from thunderstorms back in Lexington that produced not only flash flooding, but an outflow coming in that direction. It was a matter of time before a collision course of boundaries met up, and of course, as it always is here, it's right along I-65 and over the airport. And that's exactly what happened, and that led to the very heavy rain and approaching flash flood levels. I mean, we've been dry as of late, so we were able to handle a good chunk of that. I picked up a little more than 1.5 inches in just an hour's time, so it was a tremendous amount of rain, and I was worried about a lot of stuff in my yard. I mean, it happened real fast. Some wind. Airport got to 40 miles per hour, so you may have noticed some tree branches maybe laying on the ground today from that event. But let me start you off, at least let you know and reassure you that everything's nice and quiet right now. In fact, fog has been the issue because the only thing we got to deal with when you get rain like that and a lack of wind and any change in weather pattern especially, fog forms great in that environment. It does lift and eventually disperses. It takes some time for that to happen. When that happens, you create what we call a differential heating. In other words, other areas that do not have any fog because they did not get much in the way of rain are already on a climb. Areas that have had the fog are climbing slower on the thermometer. That difference creates, if you will, a mini cold front type of action, and you end up with thunderstorms that will likely develop where those differences do play out. Now, if it happens early enough, sometimes everybody can even out in time and you're fine. But there's no doubt we had so much activity here across southern Indiana, in around the Louisville area, back to Lexington and Frankfort area. That I think this is an area to watch where we could get at least more thunderstorm activity that will try to form today. I don't think it's going to be as heavy PWatts, or the amount of moisture in the air, are down even more today than yesterday. And there's not as much of a trigger. Yesterday we had an obvious trigger that's been laying out here across the Ohio River Valley. It's a little more east today, a little closer to I-75, but still close enough to us that I think that we're not done yet in tracking afternoon downpours. So if you've been missed so far this week, thinking, oh, I need some for my garden, hey, it's not all bad news. You're not out of the woods yet. It could still happen for you as well. Let's look at the rain totals, where they fell, though, yesterday. And as I mentioned, it was roughly around the Louisville area, back into the Lexington area. That was the zone to watch for the heaviest of rain. Those of you in our southern counties, you can get much. You can get much at all. I mean, you were in the upper 80s, actually, in our southern interior counties. Louisville is one of the higher spots for rainfall, and right through the center part of the county. We have multiple cells through the day, but the last one, the last gasp, if you will, that was the heaviest, quite a bit of lightning, but again, nothing severe on the wind side, just very noisy out. Even some pea-sized hail reported out of this thunderstorm until it collapsed, and eventually it did. But boundaries are fascinating this time of the year in the summer season. When you see them on the radar, it's almost like watching a battle take place. And when they come at each other like that and collide, you could just almost see the storyline happen right in front of you. Today will feature something similar, but today's, again, little asterisks in it is the idea that we have the differential heating because of the fog this morning. Still take some time to analyze how that will play out. I'm going to look over that more after I get past the midday shows today and see where we stand on that and try to pick out some boundaries. And if so, we'll alert you guys on the wave weather app itself. Okay, so here's the current view of where we are with the satellite and radar. You still see some of that. Well, it's cloud cover now from the fog, still in the Rolling Fork, Salt River basins, some into northeast Kentucky, not far from the Kentucky River area. And then you got some patchy ones too. It's like the, I always say around Muscatatuck River area, and maybe even the White River, possibly. A little bit of fog there on the banks. Yes, I see the roost reens, all the birds taking off and all the different radar. You can always tell where the radar site is. Let me get rid of my drawings. Everywhere there's a roost reen, you can see everywhere where the birds took off this morning, usually the purple martins. But anyway, so what we're going to be watching today is see how the heating plays out in areas that are still mostly cloudy right now. How is this all going to come together and form clusters of thunderstorms for this afternoon? I think there will be a few. Meanwhile, to the east, still got the tropical low that is ongoing. Temperatures at one point, I know, into the higher portions of the Appalachians were in the 50s with drizzle. Can you imagine having a cabin up in the mountains there and 50s right now with some light drizzle? It sounds actually kind of nice and cozy. Have the fireplace going, pretty nice, right? So they've had the benefit of what we call a CAD, which is cold air damming. This is a term that you'll hear more in the wintertime, and it's basically where the wind flow is coming east down the eastern side of the Appalachians, not coming from the Gulf, not coming from the west where it's hot as can be in the plains, and not coming in from the ocean. It's basically just a cool flow of air from eastern Canada that can really chill things down. This is how you get ice storms in the wintertime, is due to the CAD effect. You don't see the CAD effect very often in the summer, but when it does, it really stands out because, again, you avoid the 70s and 80s and 90s in a big way. But look at this feature to the west. This showed up yesterday. Ryan and I talked about it briefly. A couple of things with that. If you look carefully, let me see if I can zoom this in a little more. Okay, you can barely see it, but it is there. This is Canadian wildfire smoke right here. You can almost see a little bit of that haze that is around Columbia, Missouri, near St. Louis, down to Poplar Bluff area. I do not see that drifting more toward us. I think high pressure over us is going to block it. But it's interesting to see that flow because it's also being a precursor, if you will, to this complex of storms that is wanting to approach. We do have a boundary, another trough that wants to move in. It's an interesting squeeze play here where we've got this area of thunderstorms, lots of high moisture content. We talk about the dew point a lot, running 75 to near 80 like we had in the, it seems like last year already, but the surge of heat and humidity we just went through before we got the nice little cool down last weekend. It's that type of humidity that is with this feature. We don't want that back over us. Some of the hints are that it may drift over us in time for the weekend and early next week. But boy, that is really going to skyrocket the heat index again if we get those kind of dew points back. But for right now, high pressure is winning out. Let me draw out how this looks. You have a very odd sense of high pressure. It's high is like this right now over, it's not exact, but in general over Lake Erie. But it's not a perfect circle like you see on the weather maps. The dome of high pressure actually stretches roughly through this area into Chicago and then back out to the northeast. So at the moment, it has the tropical low basically trapped into the Carolina coastline. It can't do anything really, but if it gets in open water, it can develop. So that's why it's still labeled as an area of interest by the Hurricane Center. We are in rinse and repeat forecast here, the same storyline over and over again because nothing's changing. So it's just the daily moisture and thunderstorms bumping into each other, but there's no front to move the thunderstorms in a dramatic way. They just kind of drift around left, then the next one may go over to the right. They just kind of do what they want. But then you have this feature that wants to move in so bad into this ridge, but I think the ridge will hold off and fight it away for at least another, I would say, 60 to 72 hours. After that point, we may run out of luck, and I do think it eventually will run into the area, and that may introduce more of a humid and thunderstorm chance, and the heat index getting above 95 up to 100 again. Lovely. So that's the storyline of how this is looking right now for the next few days. Very slow evolving, typical for summer. Nothing's going to rapidly change here, all right? This is going to be a day by day, in some cases 2 days by 2 days of change. It's going to be very slow. So we'll have plenty of time to make adjustments to the forecast as we move along. But those are the players on the field. As far as the tropical features, I think I have that next. Do I? Oh, no, I'm going to do Futurecast. So we do that first. I know you guys have got questions and comments on this. I'll come back to you, I promise. I just want to get as much out as I can before I run out of breath. Okay, so you see Futurecast. It's our in-house model, the graph model. Similar idea. I have it always fairly zoomed out, but you get the trend that pop-up thunderstorms will be in the same spot I pointed out where we got clouds and fog right now. I don't want to get to the weeds on this. I think you guys are smart enough to understand that process and how it works. It's the heating of the day, anytime after 1 to 2 o'clock, got to be ready. They fade away at sunset like last night, and then we relax a bit, you know, get some Z's. And then we wake up the next day. We do it again, sorta. There's not as much of a boundary in the area, so it's all about being heat-based and the heat Allen effect. So I'm only thinking there's only going to be like 1 or 2, maybe 3 that will pop tomorrow. Today could be 4 or 5. So the count will continue to go down. And then as we get into Friday, again, 1 or 2, the count keeps lowering. There's your heat building. Look at all that high humidity allowing for the gold for the Cape because, again, it's such an unstable setup for thunderstorms that could fire in that environment. Some of that's going to be capped, but boy, it's really building up fuel. But for us, we don't have the high humidity yet by the time even we get into Friday, so that's a good thing. I think by the weekend, we will run out of luck. Okay, Tropics update real fast, then we'll get into some of the longer term. There's the outlook from the Hurricane Center. There's Dexter, by the way. Can you see Dexter? Still up there, hanging on. Survivor, that is. And then there's our little tropical wave, now listed at about a 40% chance of it developing. And it would go more north and east, not toward us, so FYI. So it's mainly just a coastal issue right now, but even if it's not going to develop, it's still causing a mess for the beaches there. And then we've got this wave that, boy, Hurricane Center likes the idea of it turning just because it does see a strong front that does arrive later next week. And the feeling is that with that front and maybe a second one behind it, is it would cause anything to come in to the Central Atlantic to curve. I will say there are some pieces of data that want to go still on the southern side of the Antilles and go a little more toward the Yucatan. So I can't roll out this path yet. So this is what they've drawn. It's fair, given the amount of fronts, because when you get cold fronts over and over again in our area, the East Coast, it just ricochets any tropical system, and they don't like that. They like, see you later, I'm out of here. So they turn away. But if you can get a high pressure to build in in the southeast corner of the country, that's like Goldilocks land for them, so they will aim toward it. But they can only go so far before the westerly winds that naturally happen in this area of Earth, the United States especially. We have a strong wind that's out of the west. You get into the Caribbean, it's a strong wind out of the east. So tropical systems always come in toward us, riding that little belt of east wind. But because the Earth spins, everything in the northern hemisphere, I'm getting really technical now, everything in the northern hemisphere spins to the right. We call that the Coriolis effect. Because we spin slightly to the right, that right tug takes place, and then, it gets too far right, and the westerly belt right here grabs a hold of it and then turns any tropical system away. The question always is with any tropical system is, when will that happen? Because it happens at different rates of speeds, and these wind belts are not always perfectly stacked up. They do fluctuate slightly. But anyway, that's the reason why storms come at us initially and always turn. It's because we have that westerly belt over us. That's the way Earth is designed. It's almost like our protector, but it can work against us if these storms get too far west before they make that turn to the right. Then, unfortunately, the way we stick out, Florida especially, we're in a bad spot. Anyway, I don't want to go into the weeds on that one. Most of y'all knew that story. So where do we go from here? Well, we are dealing with watching that tropical low on the southeast corner. I mentioned we're going to get hot this weekend. Humidity levels will start to go up. Thunderstorm chances, not too impressive this weekend. We get into early next week. The Euro, once again, is speeding this front back up again. Yesterday, it delayed it to almost Wednesday night. Now it's wanting to move it back into Monday night. It's having a tough time trying to figure out when it wants to push this front into the heat. It's usually best to go slow with these fronts because they're going against heat waves. They tend to be slower against a heat wave and reacting on pushing down. And we had to wait a long time for this last one to come through, right? We were teased about it for about 3 weeks, and finally it made it in here. But this one is going to do the same thing. It's going to tease us for a while. I don't think it's going to be a dramatic drop in temperature, so don't get too excited. Maybe upper 80s instead of upper 70s. But there could be a slight drop, and we could get some decent rain and thunderstorms out of this in the middle of next week or early next week. Stay tuned. Once it moves out of the way, my fear, though, is, boy, if we have any type of tropical influence that's coming in across the Caribbean and getting into the southeast corner of the country, we've got a problem. Because anytime this area gets more active with the tropics, it's usually a tall tale sign that our area becomes very, very hot. And guess what happens during this time? The Kentucky State Fair. So you know what's going to happen, right? The writing's on the wall. Look at the trends. I showed you this before from the Euro. I love looking at this because it really gives you an idea of how things have been evolving. I hope you can read these numbers. These are each model runs. These are just the highs. Only look at the highs here on the top box. But these are each model runs of the forecast highs as we've moved along, and there's your date. All right, so the bottom row is the most recent run. Notice it's got the heat, certainly for this weekend. It's been pretty locked in on that. This is where you can tell it struggled to win to move the front end, but look at that period I just showed you for mid-August. The last 2 to 3 runs, boy, you've really been going into the gray color, which is nearing 100. So at least 2 to 3 runs in a row, the Euro is saying, wait a minute, mid-August may be quite hot, hotter than it first indicated it could be. So I'm going to be watching this over the next few days and see how this latter portion, especially how this trends. But that's going to be a big player into our extended outlook. All right, let me get to 10-day and get to some of your questions because I've rambled a lot today. Let's see. Who do we got? Who we got? Always seems to be hot during the State Fair, Sean says. Yep. Although we had one year, it wasn't that long ago. Was it? I know that 2020, maybe the year, I think, was the fair canceled that year? I can't remember. It was near that point, though, that we had beautiful weather, but we're not able to go to the fair, if I remember right. It was something along those lines. What does Chuck say? I love it. Payback for all you winter lovers. Be careful. Careful, Chuck. This is a snow lovers crowd. They'll come after you. I hope Louisville gets a good heavy rain and thunderstorm like we had there yesterday. Yeah, that rain last night was really nice. I enjoyed just having dinner and just was hoping the power wasn't going to go out, but it was nice to have the heavy rain. Then my anxiety kicks up, like, oh no, my yard was going to flood. So it was like raining and raining, and just didn't want to stop. But I needed it. My yard especially needed it, so I'm actually happy. For those of you that didn't get it, I hope you get something today. And there is a chance. There is a chance. Angela got nearly 2 inches in Radcliffe yesterday. Crispy, there were so many boundaries colliding on Valley Station, but didn't get a drop. Yeah, that's the thing. Once you get a boundary, it's hard to explain outflows. That's a whole other blog on how the atmosphere behaves when you get an outflow. They don't always produce a storm right when they pass over you. Sometimes they go past you, and then you can get a thunderstorm that can develop in behind it that can be just as intense as the one in advance of it. It gets complex, but when you have a lot of colliding boundaries, there's a lot to watch. Your head can spin around. And yesterday it was definitely, it was all over the place. But it worked out. Most of us got beneficial rain out of it that we needed, especially in the core of the city. I'm sure the traffic was a mess, though. And let's try to get this out of the way before we get a lot of kids on the buses for tomorrow. That would have been a bad situation if we had that rain for the first day of school. The timing was really bad. Danny, so we haven't seen the hottest temperature of the season. Good question, Danny. So far it's been 97. I think given how humid of a year this is, 97 seems fair. The only way I see us beating that is we're going to have to go into a drought. That is still possible. We got a long way to go. Our hottest weather was the end of August and September last year, where we hit 102 for a couple of days. So if we dry out, say this particular stretch here, and this front doesn't make it at all here on Tuesday, then yeah, we got a big problem. Because not only will that rain chance on Tuesday fade away, but all those 90s you see there are going to go up. They'll be mid to upper 90s and could be beating that 97 this year. So easy answer to that, no, I don't think we have yet. But it's all going to be based on moisture, as it always is for our area. Anyway, Angie says no rain in Lanesville yesterday. I hope it stays dry today because it's the only day I can cut grass. I hope so too, but you got time right now. If you get into the heating of the day in the afternoon, then you're going to run against the clock there where they will pop. So really between now and about 2 o'clock is your best window. After that, you start to run into some problems there. Okay. I think everyone's good, understands what's going on. All right. Keep us updated on your rain totals and your photos. You guys sent in a lot of photos yesterday of the storms rolling on through, even the rainbow that a lot of you saw. So keep sending your photos. The Wave Weather app is the easiest way. We do see them. We can't always say something back to you, so I apologize, but we do at least see them. So thank you on that. And I'll have more on the rain chance for today as it evolves. We're going to be looking over the data trends to see where we can determine where some of those boundaries will be today. I'll have more on that coming up on midday, starting at 11 a.m. All right, and we have a new person of our anchor team joining us coming up. For some of you, the first time seeing him, he'll be coming up at noon today. So make sure to watch the noon show. All right, guys, I'll see you coming up on the flip side. Take care.